Thank you for joining us today for another Lions Falls Library interview. This is the voice of Megan O'Brien, the library director. I am here with Lydia Johnson Huntress. She is a local author in our community, and she recently volunteered for Storytime, reading her story, The Colors Danced. Lydia, thank you for being with us today.
You're welcome.
We've got a handful of questions for you.
Great.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, my name is Lydia Huntress, Lydia Johnson Huntress in the author world, and I'm actually an implant to Lewis County. I grew up in Pennsylvania and the Finger Lakes region, and the first time I came up here, I drove across the Tug Hill. It was so desolate. I was on my way to Beaver Camp to check that out as a place that I might consider applying to work, and I just couldn't fathom how much space and emptiness there was. But I have never left since then, and I have grown to love this place with all its nooks and crannies. I have done a lot of, most of the work I've done has actually been with kids, both like through Beaver Camp and through the local schools and through my church with kids programming, both faith-based and outdoor education, and in the school setting I substitute taught, so I was teaching everything. Primarily with middle school students. They were my favorite age group to work with. I have done over the years lots of varieties of artwork, both just for personal enjoyment and paid projects, and I learn as I go, which is exciting. Currently I am mostly raising my 4 young kids, and I started homeschooling them this year, and that is a lot of work. It's good work, and it's a lot. Yes.
Understandable. Well, take us through the development of The Colors Danced. When did you first start working on it? I know there's a really cool history there behind the whole process of the story from where it started to where it ended. So can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yes. This was actually first done for a high school creative writing class. And so the assignment was to write a children's book. And I had about 2 weeks to write a children's book. And I had about 2 days left before I finally got over fretting about, like, how could there possibly be a story that hasn't been told yet? And the idea for this story just kind of fell into my lap. I don't remember the details of that. But then I had a very frantic 2 days of staying up late, and every spare minute between classes, every little moment, I was really working hard to get the story and the illustrations to happen, and handed it in 4th period on time. Is great. And so at that time, my grandmother especially was really telling me, like, you need to pursue publishing this. This is really good. And I just felt extra loved by her. Like, thanks, Grandma, for believing in me. But she really planted that seed to want to publish children's books someday. And a handful of years ago now, honestly, like 4 or maybe even 5 years ago now, my husband said, Lydia, there's not ever going to be a good time. Like, just do it. Let's make this happen. So that is when I really started on the road of, like, making this into a real book. And I, of course, edited and did some rewriting of the story. I got feedback from a lot of people, and I completely redid all the illustrations. And that, of course, was the most time-consuming part. They're all by hand, physical artwork illustrations, and it happened. We released it, officially published like Labor Day weekend of 2020. So it's real now.
And we're glad to have it in our library. The Colors Danced is available to be checked out from Lions Falls, but also other locations in the North Country system. If you're interested in reading it at home, feel free to give us a call here and we can help you locate a copy. Also, I know Lydia does have copies for sale, and you can always get in touch with her as well if you want to have one in your very own collection. So I know you talked about this a little bit during the Storytime video, But just in case people haven't seen the read through of the book, can you explain some of the techniques you use to create the illustrations, paper and paint and that sort of thing?
Yes. This was actually a difficult choice for me because I knew that I needed to narrow down like just the number of media I was going to work with. And so when I first did the book, I used oil pastel and tempera paint. Did everything, I kind of painted with my hands through the whole thing, either fingertip painting or I am quite bad at drawing hands. And so in high school, I literally would dip my hands in paint and like print my hands the way I needed them, which kind of worked. This time I really wanted the illustrations to be a much more professional quality. And I ended up going with paper cutting. So like on here, I know that you can't see up close here, but all of these colored papers, I actually cut out with an X-Acto knife and just freehand cut them out. Some of these pieces, primarily God's hands, as I said, I'm really bad at hands, so I did not know how I was going to do that. I ended up, I started just using like Google Images, and I would do a search for the position of hand that I wanted. And then I would print it out and put that paper over the colored paper that I was going to choose. And you know those, like the black scratch off paper comes with the wooden stylus? I would use that and I would trace over it, like pressing really hard. I would trace over every line and then shine a bright light so I could see the shadow of the indents and X-Acto cut it. So I actually had mild nerve damage in my fingertips for a long time, and it kind of felt like a badge of honor. It's like, wow, I'm not messing around about that. After a while, actually just 2 illustrations or maybe 3, I realized Google Images just doesn't have the specific position I need for hands. And so I started photographing my own hands, or for 1 or 2 illustrations, I photographed my husband's hands, like in the right position I needed. And then I would do that same process of putting the printed copy over top of the paper. For the watercolor parts, I just, painted, swirled. Most of the watercoloring is swirled colors, more or less. I had to do a fair amount of learning how color works, because if you swirl them wrongly, it just looks like mud. It's gross. So learning how color works and interacts together, especially with watercolor where it kind of flows and bleeds all together. But then again, I just cut out the pieces that I needed. It turned out that though it's titled The Colors Danced, and you'd think like the colors are the main character, I really feel like God's hands are the main character. And that's as it should be. He did it all. And I love him. It was a really satisfying product it's one of those projects that was just like, I'll try this and see what happens, and wow, I just love it. So that's a great feeling to have.
It definitely shows in the artwork and the story, I agree.
Yeah.
Very well done. And you can see how much time and effort was put into creating all these things. Do you have like a ballpark of how long it took? Not necessarily to do the editing, but just the illustrations?
Well, it was 4 to 5 years ago that I started, and I am a slow, meticulous artist, and my husband sacrificed like an enormous amount. Like, he made this possible. He made this project possible. He took on countless hours of cooking and cleaning up and being with the kids solo, and like doing all of that to allow me the time to sit and focus for lengths of time. I did a lot of work on it. I'm a hostess for scrapbook retreats up at Beaver Camp, and so I kind of cheated, and instead of scrapbooking for a few years, I was like working on my book, because it was the longest stretches of unbroken focused time. they were all very forgiving and enthusiastic about what I was doing, so it worked out. But no, I have no idea how many hundreds of hours, because then also the digitizing of everything that my husband, like, he learned the software, he made it all, like, who knows? I have no idea. It's a long time.
So the real question then in my mind is, would you self-publish again? Was all of the work and the time and the effort, was it all worth it in the end?
I picture that I would like to self-publish again. I love having the authority to do what I exactly envision with it. That is not to say that I'm an expert at it. Like I said, I am learning as I go. And there are things that I would do differently about the process. There is something kind of magical about seeing, I imagine, because I'm not published with a traditional publisher yet, but seeing your own work, like, under a big name publishing house out in the world would be incredible. One of the things I was really sad about is that it was not, with this project at least, it wasn't financially feasible to do a hardcover copy. I really want it to be hardcover. So it's currently not, and I just have to deal with it. But I have learned, talking with other authors in the region, things like that, that publishing has changed a huge amount, and it just in the last couple of decades. So even 20 years ago, self-publishing was, I guess, just not considered very professional. It was for whoever wants to just get their book out there but doesn't really care much about how widespread their audience will be, quality necessarily, things like that. But the tools and the opportunities for self-publishing have increased really dramatically, so that you can do a very professional job self-publishing, and that it's changed enough also in the traditional publishing world that even if you're published with a traditional publisher, really the onus of marketing is still up to me. So I still have to do all of that work to give them some profit. So at this point, yes, I would, next projects I will pursue self-publishing again and just continue to learn how to do it better. That's my answer.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. So as this is your first book for kids, are you working on anything else? Is there anything upcoming in the future? Do you have ideas?
I have many, many ideas, both for standalone picture stories, series of books, middle grade readers, like chapter books. I have not started the next project yet, mainly because I haven't figured out how to homeschool and also have time to, like, make another project happen. So I'm kind of sacrificing this a bit at the moment in order to focus on schooling my kids. But I have many ideas. Some of them are kind of, I feel that they're kind of time dependent because they involve talking and like working closely with some older family members to take their stories and turn them into books. And of course, like, I don't know how long I can put that off and continue to have direct feedback from them on their stories. So I don't know yet what will actually come to fruition, but I bought a 10-pack of International Standard Book numbers rather than one single ISBN for this book. So I set myself up to keep going.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's good news.
Yeah.
So as an artist, just in general, what are your favorite mediums to create with? What do you prefer to work with?
I enjoyed, I've worked with like so many different types of things. I use paint mostly, and I continue to learn how different paints function, but I use them on all sorts of different materials, I guess. Paper, wood panels. I repainted I think it's an old wooden like ice fishing bucket. It's like an antique that my parents have, and I repainted the outside of that with all sorts of birds that live in their neck of the woods. I create jewelry and wreaths and whatever you want. Like I just come up with an idea and figure out how to make it happen.
Neat. So do you do any freelance work?
Yes and no. I do. I am currently in the midst of a really big project, actually for the village of Port Leyden. I'm doing a mural project for them that has stalled during the school year, and so I'm working to finish that through the rest of this spring. And that's been a really huge endeavor for me. I spent my whole summer last year working on the first part of that project, and so I can't really do like more than one thing at a time. And having, small projects would be like much more doable and interesting to me, because it's something that it's like, oh, I can do this work, and like here's a finished product after a little bit of time, and it's satisfying because kind of like a children's book, in 11 minutes you get a whole storyline and beautiful artwork and everything, and it only took 11 minutes to read through it. So yes, and on my website I've talked about artwork and editing and proofreading and like doing Storytime type programs, educational programs with kids, things like this, doing craft projects with groups of kids. I've done all sorts of things. So I'm pretty open to like, hey, if you have an idea, we can talk about it and see what the options could be.
Neat.
Yeah.
So if somebody's interested in learning more about what you do or your book or anything like that, what's the best way for anybody watching this interview to get in touch with you?
So I have a website, which is just my name, LydiaJohnsonHuntress.com. I also have a Facebook page, which is Lydia Johnson Huntress, author and artist, is that the name of the Facebook page. And so through that, of course, you can sort of directly message me through Messenger, email and phone number. I can give you my business card, and you could just like put that up or whatever.
Okay.
For people to see that information easily. So
All right.
I try to be easy to get a hold of. It works better if you type to me through a message or a text message, email, whatever, just so that you'll get an answer when I'm able to sit down and reply. If you call me, I might just ignore it.
Good to know.
Not to be rude, but just because there's like 3 screaming children and one trying to get me to do something.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming in today and reading through your story with us and sitting down for this interview. The last question I have for you, just as a librarian question, what is your favorite children's story of all time? Do you have a favorite?
I can't answer a favorite question in any single category of my life. I think overall, I would have to say that The Chronicles of Narnia is my favorite. So that's a series of 7 books by C.S. Lewis. And the way that he crafts a story, and the way that he takes this wonderful storytelling ability and also conveys truth. In that case, like, you can enjoy those stories no matter what your religious beliefs are, but he was a Christian, and he taught a huge amount about the Lord through the character of Aslan and how the story characters interact with him. And I can't read it or listen to it without just goosebumps of joy. I love it. Picture books, there's just like so many. The Angus books, he's this little Scotty dog. They were written decades and decades ago. Skippy John Jones is a lot newer, super fun to read out loud. He's this little Siamese cat that he's hysterical. Miss Rumphius is a very different like style genre from Skippy John Jones. It's pretty silly. Miss Rumphius is just this beautiful, lovely story about how to make the world a more beautiful place. So many wonderful books. Robert McCloskey, I didn't even say. Okay, so like Blueberries for Sal, Make Way for Ducklings, One Morning in Maine, Time of Wonder. He's my favorite overall author and illustrator. That's enough.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So thank you again for sitting down with us. Everybody watching, thank you for tuning in.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on our Facebook page for the library and also lionsfallslibrary.org for future events and interviews and anything else fun that we're doing.
Yes.
Enjoy your weekend.
Bye.